Welcome back to the poker vlog. This is episode number 315. For this one, we're playing a high stakes session at my hometown casino, Grayton. But before we get started, I've got a couple of announcements to make. The first one is that I've given away $50,000 worth of golden passports the last 2 weeks. All you have to do is sign up to ClubWPT Gold using promo Brad. It's a brand new online site for US and Canadian players, and that way you're eligible for this giveaway. I've got 70 more golden passports to give away through the random drawing, so I have more information in the description box down below. But also, I'm giving away 10 golden passports to those who make a 60-second vlog saying what they would do if they got a golden passport and won the $1 million in the $5 million free roll that's taking place this December during the WPT World Championship. So I have more information in the description box below for that, but all you have to do is submit that video to my tweet about it. So just go to my profile at @BBradOwen and find that tweet to submit the vlog. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. I'm on a trip to my hometown, Santa Rosa, California. It's bittersweet because the primary reason I'm here is to attend a celebration of life for a good friend of mine from high school. It isn't pleasant circumstances, but it's nice to get a break from Las Vegas, see some green trees, and even the ocean in the distance. These are the things that I missed when I'm living in the desert. Right as I land, I get nostalgic looking at Peanuts-themed memorabilia. Charles Schulz, the creator, was our local celebrity, so the city has Snoopy and Charlie Brown statues scattered all over. After grabbing dinner with my sister and seeing some friends, I head into the garage at my parents' place, which was my dad's sanctuary. It's messy, but I love looking through his stuff and thinking about everything that made him interesting and special. He probably spent hundreds of hours in here making jewelry from reclaimed copper after the 2017 fires for friends, family, and neighbors whose homes were burned down. Not only was he a handy guy with a heart big enough to match his 6'6" frame, he also had an incredibly embarrassing collection of CDs that no one in my family has been willing to throw out. It's tough to throw out anything of his, but I'm just having a hard time imagining anyone's going to be listening to booty shaking hits anytime soon. The next day, I go to Santa Rosa Taqueria, home of the best burrito on the planet. I'm having a pregame meal with one of my best friends, Charles Michna. He's the first professional poker player that I ever became friends with. Now it's time to play some high-stakes poker at Grayton Casino. I've got tons of great memories from this property, including doing meetup games and having some of my biggest wins. The whole casino is beautiful. I've done really well here overall, especially in the 10-25 game that we're about to play. I buy in for $5,000 initially. The group of guys that play here are all really friendly and give lots of action, so I'm excited to see what the session has in store for us. We begin at 2:05 p.m. During the first orbit, we're dealt ace-king offsuit in middle position. Under the gun +1 raises to 75. We're going to be 3-betting. Not only do we have one of the best hands in poker, we have removal to other strong hands. We don't want to flat to allow others behind us an opportunity to call while they're getting a good price. Our hand is good, but it does much better heads up than it does multi-way. I re-raise to 225. Generally, I'd anticipate the opponent getting the hint that we've got a monster before he folds. He's got other intentions. He puts in the 4-bet to 800. He's not the type of player to get out of line often, so this 4-bet by him from early position at the start of the session isn't something I'm taking lightly. I don't necessarily want to get this all in right away, knowing there's a good chance that we've got the same hand or we're beat. I call, suspecting that the opponent also has ace-king, since there are only 3 possible combos left of both aces and kings, while there are 9 combos of big slick that are possible, given that 1 ace and 1 king are accounted for. It's heads up and we're in position with 4 figures already in the middle. The flop comes Jack 10-7 with 2 diamonds. We've got nothing except a straight draw with 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. This isn't a terrible flop for us given the pre-flop action though, especially when the opponent checks. He probably wouldn't have 4-bet with jacks or 10s. He most likely would have called our 3-bet with those types of hands. I've already discounted the opponent having aces or kings since we have removal for those combos. It's possible that the opponent has queens, but even that hand won't be all that happy about the flop because we could easily be holding jacks or 10s after 3-betting and only calling the opponent's 4-bet. It's not impossible for us to have aces or kings that we're trapping with either. I take a stab betting 900. Perhaps we can get the opponent to fold a hand that chops with us. Even if he has queens, he's going to at least start considering the fact that he could be in deep trouble. I sense that he's not thrilled to see the bet, but doesn't want to give up just yet. He seemingly reluctantly calls, which is how I imagine he'd proceed if he indeed has ace-king, especially if he has either the ace of diamonds or a backdoor club draw. The turn is the deuce of clubs. It doesn't change much except it puts a second flush draw on the board. The opponent checks again. We've got about a pot-sized bet left in our stack. Some of the time our opponent can still have an overpair, but I'm going with my read that him and I have the same hand. I want to get him off of a chop. Let's see if he's willing to play for the maximum. I rip it for 3,300 as a semi-bluff. We fade the snap call, so we're definitely not up against a slow-played monster. If the opponent has queens and he calls, we'll at least have 10 outs with around 20% equity. I doubt that's what he has though. He folds. We get the bluff shoved through to likely get the opponent off the same hand. Exerting max pressure allows us to win 1,700 without making a pair. Lately, I've gotten into big holes right out of the gate in a lot of sessions. Today, we're up 4 figures, minutes into it. We're off to a nice start after pulling off a gutsy play at the right time. 40 minutes in, we're dealt queen 6 suited in the big blind. Onto the gun limps in, which is a phenomenal sign that the game is good. You almost never see anyone open limp in high stakes games because it's generally a bad idea. Here, there are multiple players utilizing this strategy. Onto the gun +1 raises to 125. Suited hands tend to play fairly well multi-way. I call for 100 more. Onto the gun limper calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. It comes jack 7 deuce with 2 diamonds. We've got a flush draw with 1 over. I check. Onto the gun checks. Onto the gun +1 bets 125. We're happy to pay that price in order to advance. I call. Onto the gun isn't going to let us see a turn for 125 though. He puts in a tiny check raise to 325. He's representing mostly a set of 7s or deuces. He should never have 2 pair. Maybe he can have ace-jack after limping in from under the gun, but our flush draw is probably very live. Under the gun +1 surprisingly folds to the small raise. We're not going anywhere when we're getting pot odds like this. I call for 200 more to see the turn. The dealer puts out the queen of clubs, giving us top pair. It's not the card that we were rooting for, but it might be good enough for us to take the lead. I check. I'd expect the opponent to slow down if he had a hand like ace-jack or king-jack now that it's been downgraded to second pair. The opponent continues blasting away. He bets 550. He's only got 1,500 behind. I've seen this player do some things in previous hands that lead me to believe he's more of a straightforward player and not a huge bluffer. We've got plenty of cards that can help us improve with decent implied odds. I call to see if we can hit a diamond. The river is the 8 of hearts instead. We break our big draw but still have top pair. I check. I'd love to see a check back so that we can get to showdown. The opponent rips it in for 1,500 though. We're getting about 2.5 to 1 on a call. Is the opponent getting wild with a missed flush draw? There are really only 2 hands and I see the opponent playing this way for value, and that's pocket 7s and pocket deuces. Maybe he could have queen jack, but I don't know if he check raises with that on the flop. Any other 1-pair combo containing a jack would have checked back on the turn and or river. One of my biggest problems lately is that I keep running into monsters. I regularly think to myself, well, they can't have it every time against me. Then I call, somewhat on the lighter side, just to be shown that they have it once again. I make a disciplined fold here that I haven't been able to make all that often the past few months. The opponent is a viewer who later tells me that he had pocket 7s for a flopped set. We get away without losing as much as we could have. I win a few smaller hands to get the stack back up to the high point in order to be winning about 1,800. We're not long into the session, but my reads and decisions are working out well so far. Next, we're dealt ace-6 offsuit in the big blind. The small blind is the one that we tangled with in the first hand we went over with ace-king. He raises to 100. We're closing the action with an ace. We might have the best hand. I call to play heads up in position. The flop comes ace-queen-9 with 2 diamonds. We've got top pair. Small blind down bets to 50. We're getting 5 to 1 with a decent hand. I call. The turn is the ace of hearts, giving us trips. The small blind doesn't like it. He checks. We've almost definitely got the best hand on a board with a lot of draws. I bet 200. The small blind has something that he wants to stick around with. He makes the call. The river is the 10 of diamonds, completing most of the major draws. The small blind checks. He probably would have bet more on the flop and might have continued betting on the turn with a draw, so I'm not as concerned as I might normally be about the draws getting there. Trips is too good of a hand to check back when it's blind versus blind. I bet 300. Maybe I can get called by king-queen, queen-jack, or queen-10 type of hands. The small blind surprisingly check raises to 1,000. I'm not even sure he'd do this with a flush or straight. He's mostly representing full houses, which we have removal to. The small blind definitely has the range advantage with all the high cards on the flop. He could be trying to play into that. I call for 700 more. The small blind isn't bluffing. He's got the nuts with ace-queen. The case-ace comes on the turn to get us into quite a bit of trouble, particularly after the small blind checks. I fall right into his trap to lose all the profit that we built up for the day. In this hand, we're dealt pocket sevens in the cutoff. The straddle's on for 50. Onto the gun +1, raises to 150. I call. The small blind calls. His name is Noel Rodriguez. He's been on a tournament tear lately, getting second place in a 25K bracelet event over summer for 1.1 million. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes 10-8-7 rainbow. We've got bottom set on a connected board. The small blind leads for 200. You don't see this play taken by the small blind too often, with 2 opponents behind him on a board with a lot of middling cards, because we could have smashed this flop like we did, and so could the pre-flop raiser. Typically, this play is taken by someone who has a big range advantage, like if the big blind defends and it's all low cards on the flop. In this case, the pre-flop raiser can have all the sets and Jack-9 suited combos. We can reasonably have all those as well. I put the small blind on a draw of some sort that he wants to see the turn with cheaply. This move also puts a ton of pressure on the pre-flop raiser, who's sandwiched between us and the flop better. Onto the gun +1 calls. Our hand isn't likely to improve too much. There are a lot of bad turn cards that can complete straights. I raise to 700. The small blind could have something like 10-9 or 9-8. He might even have pocket 9s. He's going to rep something stronger though. He re-raises to 2300. I don't necessarily love seeing that. Onto the gun +1 folds. We're in a tough spot. Folding our set is too nitty, even though we could be beat. If the opponent has a straight, we'll at least have plenty of outs. If we call, we're going to have about 60% of a pot-sized bet left in our stack, which isn't a whole lot. The opponent might have 3-bet pre-flop with pocket 10, so I'm mostly ruling that hand out. Maybe he's got 10-8 or 8-7 that he's doing this with for value that we're ahead of. You can still have all those hands containing a 9 that I mentioned earlier that he's raising with as a semi-bluff, since he'd have removal to the nuts. I'm not getting away. If we're beat, it's a cooler. I jam for 54.50 total. Small blind snap calls. It's not what I was hoping to see. It appears that we've run into the nuts or something close to it. The turn is the jack of spades, putting 4 to the straight on board. Any hands that we might have been beating have pretty much all improved to take the lead, other than potentially 10-8, but even pocket jacks now has us beat. The river is the queen of diamonds. It's no help. I'm not confident at all as I reveal our bottom set. The small blind shows that he has us notched with pocket 8s. He set oversets me in a pot containing more than $11,500. I've never lost a high stakes session in this room, but this is a brutal setup that causes me to be stuck a buy-in. The game tends to play bigger and more loose as the night goes on though, so there will still be plenty of opportunities to win some big pots in order to make a comeback. I buy some of my chips back from the opponent and add on for 10,000 more. I'm in for 15,000 total. Here we're dealt pocket queens in the small blind. The table's agreed to play team poker, and this is the first hand of it. There are 4 players on each team. If your team wins a hand, you get a point. The first team to get 7 points wins the game. The losing team has to pay 100 out to each player who wins. Most of the table has never played this before, but it sounds like fun, especially when we're holding a premium hand. The hijack raises to 175. The straddle's on every hand now. I 3-bet to 700 to possibly get our team on the board. The hijack is going to play some defense. He calls for an additional 550. We're heads up out of position. The flop comes ace-10 deuce rainbow. We have second pair. We can still be best though. We're going to be c-betting 100% of our range on this flop. I down bet to 500 to get hands like medium pocket pairs that didn't improve to fold, just to clear out some equity. The hijack calls. We might have to shut down now because there's a good chance that our opponent will have top pair that he might not want to let go of. The turn is the king of clubs, making things interesting. At first glance, it seems like a bad card because it downgrades us a third pair, but it's better for our range. We can still have aces, kings, and ace-king. Our opponent will rarely, if ever, have those combos when he elects to call rather than 4-bet pre-flop. We also have removal to queen-jack, which we'll be 3-betting occasionally pre-flop as well. I keep the aggression up with a bet of 1700. The hijack is to strongly consider folding all 1-pair hands, including top pair, because those combos might be drawing dead. I tend to have a tight image, so the second bet should be given a lot of respect. The hijack isn't considering folding. He raises to 5,000. This isn't something I expected to see at all. I discounted or ruled out tons of strong combos that the opponent might have, given how the hand was played up to this point. Maybe he has 10s, or one of those 2 combos of queen jack suited that are left in the deck. I'm tempted to rip it, to rep the straight that we have removal for, but it's too likely that we've run into the nuts again, and the hijack doesn't have that much remaining. I get caught trying to make a move. It's best to cut the losses. I fold face up, waving the white flag. The opponent is willing to show for the vlog. He has 3 deuce of clubs. He went way out of his way to see a flop. He hit bottom pair, then turned to flush draw before getting his semi-bluff through. He deserves to be his team's MVP for this effort. The game we're playing causes me to lose several thousand rather than win a couple hundred pre-flop. I had on for 10,000 more. I'm in for 25,000 total. We played another circus game at the dealer change, and this one we're dealt ace queen 8 with 2 spades in middle position in an 8-handed, 3-card, double board bomb pot for $100 each. The first flop comes 8-4-3 with 2 spades. We've got top pair and a draw to the nuts. The second flop is king 10-3 with 2 clubs. We've got a Broadway draw on that one. Checks to the button. He could let everyone get to the turn for free. He's not a nice guy though. He bets 500. With 3 cards, a lot of players can connect in a variety of different ways. It appears that's what's happened. The small blind, big blind, and under the gun call. We've got a lot of potential. I call as well. The hijack calls. The top turn is the queen of spades, giving us the ace high flush and top 2 pair in case we're able to improve to a full house. The bottom turn is the ace of hearts, giving us top pair to go along with our straight draw. Checks to us when you have the nuts that are non-duplicable with multiple opponents in a split pot game, but you're not super strong to win the second half of the pot. It's best to bet an amount that isn't too large so that it can get called by more than one opponent. If this gets down to heads up, I'll start piling money in because then we give ourselves an opportunity to blow our opponent off of a chop, or we're potentially free rolling a massive bet if we happen to have the winner on both boards. For right now, I bet 1100 for value. The hijack folds, the button folds. This isn't bad for us. We're guaranteed to at least play the rest of the hand in position. The small blind and big blind fold. I'd like to get called in at least one spot. Under the gun folds as well. We finally make a hand to bet for value, but we're not able to get paid. The good news is that we still win a substantial pot that gets our stack up to the $20,000 mark. We're only down $5,000 on the day, which is manageable. Almost 6 hours in, we're dealt Jack 3 suited in the under the gun straddle. The cutoff raises to 150. The big blind calls. We're going to be defending every suited combo under these conditions. I call for 100 more. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes Jack 9-4 with 2 hearts. We've got top pair and a flush draw. The big blind leads for 300. Where have we seen this before? Our hand doesn't need much protection since we can easily improve. We want to keep the opponent's bluffs in. I call. The cutoff doesn't mind all the action in front of him. He calls as well. All 3 of us are still in. The turn is the jack of diamonds, giving us trips. It's getting better and better for us. The big blind keeps his foot pressed to the floor with a bet of 600. We've kind of got everything. The big blinds representing trip jacks are better though when he continues firing after getting called in 2 spots. I don't see much reason to raise. I call. The cutoff doesn't need to be Sherlock Holmes in order to catch on that at least one of his opponents has a strong hand. He folds. It's down to heads up. The river is the 7 of spades, completing one of the straight draws. There's no trepidation from the big blind. He bets 1500. Maybe he flopped a set or 2 pair and has had us the whole way. Maybe he had a straight draw and just got there. Or maybe he also had a flush draw and has missed. I don't like seeing him bet, but we've got a strong hand, so it's tough to get away. I feel like I'm B tier. So rough. Cold. Great.
Yeah. Nice hand.
The haymakers keep on coming. The opponent led flop and turn with an open ender. We did everything right to keep the opponent's bluffs in while he was drawing slim, but he managed to get there. If he had queen 10 instead, or a flush draw and missed, he likely would have continued firing on the river as well, but this time it works out for him and he gets paid. Later on, we're dealt ace-king offsuit middle position with the straddle on. We haven't seen too many premiums today, and even when we haven't connected much with the board. This would be a good time to turn that around. I raised to 150. The small blind wants to make things interesting. He 3-bets to 500. He's one of the shorter stacks at the table with around 100 times the straddle amount. We've got removal to aces and kings, reducing the amount of those combos that the opponent can have by 50%. Folding is not an option. We can play conservatively with a call. we can raise to a small amount and call off if we get jammed on, or potentially have some tough decisions post-flop if the opponent calls and we don't hit. Finally, our last option is to 4-bet rip it in order to get hands as good as jacks and sometimes even queens to fold. I played ace-king offsuit more conservatively in the first hand that we went over. We're switching gears and cranking out the aggression to 11. I 4-bet jam for 5,435 effective. Small blind checks his cards to make sure that they're both still aces. They are. He makes the call.
I mean, whatever you want to do. We'll chill once.
We're running it once for another 5-figure pot, and I'm going to need a lot of help. The flop comes Jack 7-3 rainbow. It's not the type of flop that we were looking for. The turn deuce has a stone dead. The river is the 9 of clubs. It doesn't matter. I lose another massive pot. Every time that I've got something close to the top of my range, the opponent finds a way to show up with something better. In some of these spots, I can certainly lose less, but it's a lot easier said than done when good hands aren't holding up and we're on the wrong side of a pile of coolers. Then, when I make a fold, opponents are showing up with 3 deuce suited. I just can't seem to do anything right today. I add on for another 5,000 when we're dealt ace-jack offsuit in middle position. We're in for 30,000 total. I raise to 150. The under the gun straddler is the only caller. We're heads up in position. The flop comes king 6-4 with 2 diamonds. We don't connect too well, but we've at least got some backdoor draws with an over. The opponent checks. We're going to be keeping the pressure on. I bet 200. Our bet gives us the opportunity to win it right now without much showdown value, and if we get called, the plan is to continue betting if a diamond or high card comes out that gives us equity. We're not going to be winning this with a single post-flop bet though, that'd be too easy. The opponent calls, the turn is the 9 of diamonds giving us a flush draw. We now have removal to the nuts as well. The opponent checks. We can bet with impunity, knowing that it's very unlikely that we'll get check raised, and if we do, we can potentially rip it as a semi-bluff to make the under-the-gun player wish that he'd gone to a different poker room today. I bet 450, living up to the promise that I made earlier about continuing to bet if we got a high card or diamond on the turn. The opponent still isn't ready to return his cards to the dealer. He calls. The river's the 5 of hearts. That's okay. We didn't want a strong hand like the ace-high flush anyway. Under the gun checks. We've got nothing, but we know what the opponent doesn't have. We're not playing nice. I overbet 2,000. Almost regardless of what the opponent has, he's probably not feeling all that comfortable with the decision that he's facing. We likely would have gotten called quickly if the opponent had a flush. We don't necessarily need to be worried about him having a hand that strong because he appears to be deciding between calling or folding rather than calling or raising. He's supposed to fold over 50% of the time when he makes it to the river and is up against a bet this large. After 45 seconds, the opponent folds, we get the big bluff through and played it nearly perfectly other than the fact that we could have bet slightly smaller on the flop, but the sizing on the turn and river are solver approved. It's nice to see a pot pushed our way, especially when we got what must have been the best hand to fold. Now we're dealt Jack 4 suited in the big blind, the hijack limps in for 50. Small blind calls, we're getting a discount to see a cheap flop, I call for 25 more. Under the gun checks his option. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It comes ace king 9 with 2 diamonds. We've got a flush draw. With 2 high cards out there, this isn't a flop that'll connect well with most players when it's a limped pot. We all check. The turn is the deuce of diamonds giving us the 3rd nuts. The small blind checks. We're not going to allow anyone to see a free river. I bet 150. If we want to mitigate the damage today, we're going to need to get some action when we're at the top of our range like right now. Under the gun is a viewer of the channel. He doesn't let me down. He calls. The hijack and small blind fold. It's down to heads up. A blank would be ideal. The river is the queen of hearts. It's not a bad one for us. We had a fake flush right before this, and on the river, made over a pot-sized bet as a bluff. This time, with a real flush, we keep the same spirit and bet 500 into 500. We haven't been able to bet for value all that often today. It's one of the best feelings in poker when you make a large wager and you can sit back and relax knowing a pot is about to come your way no matter what the opponent decides to do. What's even better is when that bet gets called, you turn over the 3rd best hand possible, the opponent takes a second to realize that he's been gotten, and a nice amount of chips comes your way. The tide is turned, we're stringing some wins together, and there are a few wild players in the game that might be able to help us get unstuck. We pick up ace 3 offsuit under the gun +1. As the night goes on, the game plays bigger and bigger with multiple people double straddling. I've got the double straddle on to 100 this hand. One of those wild players that I alluded to raises to 500 from the cutoff. This is a huge sizing. Ordinarily, I'd fold with a weak ace to a raise this large, but the opponent is the type of guy that I like to get involved in pots with, and I don't quite realize how much the raise is for at the moment. I call thinking it's 400 before the dealer points out that she's not going to let me get 20% off. Kind of rude because I did have a coupon. I toss in another 100 to see the flop. We're heads up, out of position. The dealer puts out 6-5-4 rainbow. We've got an open ender, and in general, this is going to smash our straddle defend range. A lot of the time, I'd consider leading, but I know the hijack wouldn't fold a damn thing to me. He might raise big or even shove. I've already seen him do a number of absolutely insane things in hands against other people. I check. A lot of strong players will check back aces or kings the majority of the time on this flop, or they'll bet under half pot. In this case, the cutoff bet's 1,000. It's nearly a pot-sized bet. We're not supposed to go anywhere yet. We can call or raise. Any 7, deuce, or ace will probably give us the best hand. It feels a lot like we're up against jacks or something. If I thought a raise would induce a fold more than about 1% of the time, I'd consider it more. Semi-bluffing an opponent like this isn't going to work out very often though. I call. The turn is the queen of diamonds. It's no help at all. I check. The cutoff is concerned. After betting big on the flop and getting resistance, he checks back. Now it feels even more like we're up against jacks or 10s, and the opponent doesn't like seeing an overcard his pair come out. The river is the deuce of hearts, giving us the super wheel to the 6. There's no way that the opponent checked back a straight on the turn. We've got the effective nuts. It's time to go for value. We only need to determine the proper sizing. Let's put ourselves in the opponent's shoes. If we had pocket jacks, how much would we be willing to call? I go with a bet of 1,700. It's a little over half pot, but it's a large portion of the cutoff stack. He only has 3,400 total. A jam might have been a better decision. I just didn't want to scare the cutoff away or give him too easy of a decision. This sizing should get called at a high frequency. The opponent has taken a little while to think about it. He doesn't want to let us have it without putting up a fight. He calls. We show him our super wheel, fit for Gravedigger. The cutoff doesn't like seeing it. We never find out what he called us with, as his cards remain face down. I was stuck 15,000 at the low point. We're currently only down about 10,000. I like the setup. It's a great game. If we keep things rolling, particularly with the double straddle to 100 on and run halfway decent, we've got a shot at potentially cruising past the break-even mark to book a solid win. Less than 20 minutes later, we're dealt king-queen offsuit in the big blind. The hijack limps in for 50. I can't emphasize enough how much I like seeing open limping in high-stakes games. The button is one of the strongest players at the table. He raises to 300. Small blind calls. I call for 250 more. The hijack calls as well. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It comes 7-6-6 rainbow. It's not one that hits us. No one seems to like it much. We all tread carefully as it checks around. The turn is the queen of hearts, giving us top pair. The small blind checks. I consider betting, but I don't know if I'll get called by too many worse hands when no one liked the flop. Plus, the high card on the turn will ordinarily be better for the button's range as the pre-flop aggressor, especially when he checks back the flop. He could reasonably have a queen in his hand, or if he doesn't, he might take a stab as a bluff. Either way, it doesn't hurt us much to play passively at the moment. I check, the hijack checks, somewhat as expected. The button bets 600. He could have a worse queen, a flush draw, or air, and is trying to buy it after seeing his 3 opponents check on both the flop and the turn. The small blind folds. Raising doesn't accomplish a whole lot. I call. There isn't too much to be concerned about. We don't really want to see a heart come out, but there's only one over that would downgrade us. The hijack folds. It's down to heads up. The river is the ace of spades. It's that one over that I mentioned that downgrades us. I check. The river is certainly a better card for the button, and he's smart enough to realize that. He bets 1,200. Maybe he has ace queen. He's had us beat the entire way. Maybe he has ace x of hearts, and he paired his ace, but I'd expect him to check that back on the river a lot of the time. This player is good enough to know that it's tough for me to have ace-queen after not 3-betting pre-flop. Because of that, he may be inclined to turn his missed flush draw that doesn't contain the ace of hearts into a bluff to get me off second or third pair. I call. The opponent has ace-5 of hearts, hitting a terrific card for him on the river and doing a great job to bet an amount that I don't want to fold to. I get taken to Value Town. It's time for another bomb pot. We're playing double board hold'em with king jack suited in the hijack. All 8 players put in 100 each, and we're going straight to 2 flops. The first one comes ace 10 deuce rainbow. We've got a gutter and a backdoor flush draw. The bottom flop is jack 6-3 rainbow. We've got top pair and a backdoor flush draw. All in all, it's good for us. There aren't too many hands that we're losing to on both boards except sets on the bottom board, overpairs to the jack and ace jack. It checks to us, I bet 400. It's a half pot sizing, the cutoff calls, the small blind is a new player at the table, she raises to 1500. I wasn't expecting to see that. It folds back to us, we have top pair with a good kicker and a draw to the nuts, so I'm not in a hurry to let go of our hand just yet. I call for 1100 more. There's already a large pot, the cutoff folds, it's down to heads up, the top turn is the 6 of hearts, the bottom turn is the 6 of diamonds, pairing the board and putting a flush draw out there. It's interesting because we're now losing to hands like ace-6, jack-6, 10-6, 6-3, and 6-deuce on both boards. The small blind doesn't mind all the 6s out there, she bets 2300. I'm still not convinced that we're beat on both boards. Also, if we hit a queen, we might be able to stack the opponent as she's overplaying her cards and is only strong on the ace-high board. I'm not thrilled with the situation, but I call. Runouts have been much better for our opponents today than they have been for us. This would be a great moment to hit a hidden draw. The top river is the 3 of diamonds, the bottom river is another ace. It's an awful bottom river because if the opponent has an ace, which is likely, she has me beat everywhere. She bets 3900. She's not scared of anything. I was hesitant to call on the turn. Now I definitely can't call. I fold.
You win. That's it.
We never find out what the opponent has or if it was a good fold or not until she reveals ace-king offsuit. She was drawing dead to 2 outs on the bottom board, then drilled the ace. She played her one pair extremely aggressively by check raising the flop when she had a lot of opponents. Then she barreled turn and she got there on the river, causing me to lose $4,000 in the hand. We have no choice but to get revenge against her. I'm stuck almost 18,000, running into tough spot after tough spot. 9 hours in, we're dealt 9-8 offsuit in the under the gun straddle. I've added on for my last 10,000 to make sure that I have certain players at the table covered. I'm in for 40,000 total. The button limps in for 50. The small blind raises to 300. This is the same opponent that we lost to earlier, who turned his 3 deuce of clubs into a bluff, and he also rivered the ace against us when we had king queen. I call to at least play in position on the pre-flop aggressor. The button folds. It's down to heads up. The flop comes 9-6-4 rainbow. We've got top pair. The small blind bets 375 despite it not being a great flop for his pre-flop raising range. There's no chance that we're letting go at this juncture. I call. The turn is the king of diamonds. An overcard is obviously bad for us. The small blind is going to rep minimally top pair. He bets 900. This is a similar spot to the last time that we got involved in a hand against the same opponent. Overcards came out on the turn and river. The opponent bluffed on the turn when he picked up a draw. Then he hit an ace and bet for value on the river. Calling him down didn't work in that hand, but that doesn't mean that it won't work here. I call. We can still be up against a number of hands that the opponent might be bluffing with, like flush or straight draws, maybe even just ace high. The river is the queen of clubs. Queen jack, queen 10, and jack 10 all improve to beat us, as do flush draws containing a queen and ace queen. The small blind slows down and checks. We're not going to turn our hand into a bluff. We've got some showdown value. I check back. The small blind has ace 10 offsuit for no pair. We get the win after showing some tenacity on the turn. Our third pair allows us to take down the pot. It's almost midnight when we're dealt 10-6 suited and the under the gun +1 double straddle to 100. The cutoff limps in. This is the woman who beat us with ace king in the double board bomb pot. The button raises to 300. It's only 200 more for us. I call. The cutoff also calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop, out of position. It comes queen jack 8 with 2 hearts and a spade. We've got a gutter and a backdoor flush draw. I check. The cutoff checks. It shouldn't be a great flop for her range after she only limp called pre-flop. She shouldn't have too many high card combinations that'll connect well. This should be a much better flop for the button, who's the pre-flop raiser, but he checks. Maybe he doesn't have much. The turn is the 4 of clubs. It's a blank. I check. The cutoff likes seeing all the passivity from her opponents. She bets 500. The button folds. We've only got a weak draw, so folding is reasonable, but I don't think the cutoff will have a strong hand all that often, especially when we have removal to 10-9. I check raise to 1600 to get some revenge that I was talking about earlier. We're semi-bluffing to mostly represent a straight. The cutoff isn't ready to let go. She calls for 1100 more. She probably would have considered raising if she had 2 pair or better, but she didn't appear to do that. It's down to heads up. The river is the ace of diamonds. The ace will often be a bad card for the cutoff because I wouldn't expect her to limp call pre-flop from the cutoff with hands like aces, ace king, ace queen, ace jack, or even ace 10. With how this has been played, it's unlikely that she'll have top pair unless she had a heart draw that improved. King 10 makes a straight. we have removal to that. We semi-bluffed with the combo containing a 10, and now that another straight gets there containing a 10, while an overcard came out which probably downgrades the strength of the opponent's hand, I'm more willing to continue bluffing. I bet 3,500. Hopefully the opponent has a busted flush draw with no pair. She's seriously considering calling, so she's got at least some showdown value. Maybe she hit that ace after all. About 30 seconds goes by, then the opponent calls. I embarrassingly turn over 10 high. Not only do I not get revenge, the cutoff wrecks my world by calling somewhat light on the river with second pair.
Nice call.
The opponent wins a monster pot with king-queen offsuit and the king of hearts. She had removal to the nuts and didn't want to fold against me. I tried to force it. My play cost me a big chunk more money, although if her cards were face up, I might have bet the same amount and expected to see a fold fairly often. It's been a long day without too many things going my way. It's not how I hoped the session would go, but when playing high stakes, big losses are going to occasionally happen. I just have to take the lumps, learn, and get better for the next time. Today's not my day though, and I know it. It's time to head out. Another tough day. Lost $24,000 over 10 hours. Game was great. Just nothing really came easy, and tried to force things. Same old story. Tired of giving these updates. But yeah, not a good year. I think I'm stuck like 40K now for the year, something like that. So hopefully I can turn something around at some point and just string some wins together. I've either been like breaking even or having really, really big losses. So it hasn't been fun, and I need to something needs to change. That's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. Don't forget to sign up to ClubWPT Gold using the bonus code BRAD. Henry's over there. That'll make you eligible for the biggest giveaway that I've ever done. I've already given away over $50,000 for the golden passports. I've got 70 golden passports to give away still through the random drawing, and you're eligible if you just take 2 minutes to sign up to the new site. There's no deposit or purchase necessary. And I'm also doing a contest on Twitter right now, where if you submit a 60-second vlog saying what you'd do if you got a golden passport and you won the $1 million first place prize and the $5 million free roll this December, just submit that in the replies of the tweet and you'll be eligible. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. In addition to that, I have another giveaway where I'm giving away 10% of every cash game session that I win over the next 6 months to someone who signed up using the bonus code BRAD. So there are several winners of that. I picked one in the last vlog, but I've got 3 more. I've had some nice wins lately, so congratulations to Tyler, John, and Elijah. You guys have won some additional Bradley dollars. That money's gonna be deposited into your ClubWPT Gold accounts once the site is fully up and running, hopefully in January of 2025. So hope you guys are all doing well. Hope you're staying safe. I'm gonna be going to Jacksonville, Florida, and Seminole Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida this November for WPT events, and then the World Championship this December. I'll be there the entire month in Las Vegas at the Win, so that's going to be awesome. I hope to see you guys around. All right, bye.